All right, so we're live, Chris. Welcome, and it's my friend Chris, otherwise known as Colorado Chris. From I always want to say you live in Lathrop, which I know is not true. You live in
Lockford.
Lockford, which is a nice little town, just a few minutes outside of Lodi. And we got looks like we got no viewers. Daniel Silverthorne left a message, so we'll see if people join us. Daniel, I don't know. I mean, you might be here. If you are, leave a note. Let me text him. Let's see. I like people to tell us where we're at. So, let me see here. Daniel. So, we were talking a little bit about movies. Oh, shit. God damn it. Oh, shit popping up on my screen. Oh, crap. They're going to demonetize me. Oh, I don't do that anyway. So, what I was going to say was what was interesting about movies. I was looking for Patton the other night, and I was like, "Ooh, I could watch Patton," and I didn't. I ended up watching this three-part miniseries on Prime. They got this like History Vault, and it was a three-part biography on Lincoln. It was pretty cool. So we got, let's see, we got Brian Jarvis from Halifax, right? Brian, I got that right. I hope so. And Daniel from San Jose, awesome. Got 5 viewers. So we're I already said earlier when nobody was here. We got my buddy Colorado Chris here joining us. If you're in the chat, ID where you're from. So Chris, I always like to start off the show here with so boy, there's always a couple good questions. Maybe tell us a little bit about yourself, how you got into gaming, that kind of thing, and what kind of
Okay.
gaming. It doesn't have to
Okay.
necessarily be war games, but what was your journey that got you to where you are a war gamer now?
So my first experience was I I remember seeing a copy of Panzer Blitz and Walden Books in the Southland Mall in Hayward, probably in the early '80s. I couldn't have been more than about 8 or 10 years old, um, and the cover art absolutely intrigued me. The Yag Panther up front. You know exactly what I'm talking about, Mark. Um,
Yeah.
and It was way over my head as far as knowing what a war game was. My mom was in there shopping for books, and I saw this thing sitting on the shelf, and I picked it up, realized it wasn't a book; it was like an actual, like it was a game, and I was drawn to it, and I don't know what it was. I remember looking at the backside of the game and just being, completely intrigued on what this thing was. And I remember, in so many words, telling my mom I had to have it. And I think at the time, I think the price tag was something around like $20. And had to be in the early '80s. And I remember I was getting about $1 a week of as far as allowance goes. And she was like, "Well, save up for it and maybe you can get it." And I'm like, "Well, $20, $1 a week at $20, this place is going to be out of business by the time I'm able to afford it." And long story short, I didn't end up getting it. But one of my first actual war games was Axis and Allies. And I
Hmm.
got it when, once again, I couldn't have been more than 10. I got it from my grandmother. Um, and that kind of started my journey down. My cousin John, um, he got me. I remember visiting him up in Oregon, and we actually played Axis and Allies. We played Fortress America. We played a lot of those. I don't know if you consider them proper war games. They were part of that Game Master series. But
Yeah,
I remember,
1986. Those came
yep.
out, I think. Yeah.
Um, and he um, he had a copy of Assault by GDW, and that really intrigued me. as well. And it wasn't until probably the early 90s when I got a copy of Squad Leader, and I was actually able to play that, sit down face to face with another opponent for like the hex and counter games that you started the club on.
So
Um,
Squad Leader was your first per se hex encounter war game.
yes, it was. It was.
Okay, awesome. I love it.
And what was interesting about that was I was an infantryman. I just joined the military. Um, I was an infantryman, and that game really appealed to me because there was a lot of realism of, um, you know, people think that there's a lot of difference between World War II infantry combat and modern infantry combat, and there really isn't. There, at least at that time. Um, so I picked up when I was stationed at Fort Bragg in North Carolina. I was I would I had a couple of friends in the barracks that would play with me, and there would be other guys that would come in and watch us play and see what we were playing and going like, well, that was just like the last live fire that we were on. Um, and you would have squads suppressing an objective and other squads rolling up and throwing satchel charges into um, buildings and stuff. And we're like, dude, we did that on the last live fire. And so it kind of intrigued people to kind of, if they didn't want to play, they at least wanted to watch. And so we had a good time kind of playing those games out. And Squad Leader was really one that did it for me. And there was a game store right off our post. It was called The Hobbit. And they had a huge selection of games, particularly war games, hex and counter style. And I remember seeing the game Crisis. I want to say it was Crisis Korea 1995, which would end up being Next War Korea, I believe.
Right. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and I didn't manage to pick up that game, but I wanted to play it. Um, but I also had NATO, um, the Next War in Europe, the original copy. I got that as a kid, and it was way over my head. And even though I had it, I wasn't really able to find anybody to play it.
No.
Um, and and it was kind of over my head at the
Oh, wait,
time.
wait,
But
wait. So back up a second. So this was before Squad Leader or after Squad Leader?
actually, NATO was before Squad Leader,
Okay. All right. That makes sense.
but
Because
I
I
didn't
was
really
like,
have anybody to play it with.
yeah, yeah. All right.
So
No, you're. This is great. You're probably the second. No, yeah, you would. I think you must be the second youngest gamer I've ever had on. I think Ivan's going to hold that record. He's 24 years old. So, and he's playing ASL. So I know you're not in your 20s anymore. So we'll have to add NATO and Next War Korea to our long list of games because those really like stood out. And what can you say, Squad Leader? I know we'll get to play that again. Played that pretty recently. So I'm waiting. I was kind of waiting to see where the audience is on questions, but they're not asking too much. So that's interesting. You say about infantry combat. Thank gosh I was never, shot at. Of course, I'm an Air Force not Brad. I'm an Air Force C-141 loads. I used to carry you guys around like, well, we're going to go on an exercise. We're going to Europe. Okay, so we'll load up at Travis. We're going to, refuel in Goose Bay or aerial refuel, drop you guys off somewhere. Okay, you go do your field exercise because guess what? I'm going fucking downtown staying at the hotel. Okay. But anyways,
yeah,
obviously couldn't have not do what we did without each other, but yeah. And like I said, thank goodness, I've never been in a situation where I was in some shit or whatever. But that being said, I heard you say Assault. Now that's a game that I no longer have. I had it. I actually at one point had the whole series except for the very rare reinforcements. If people know that series, that's the piece that's like super hard to find.
Right.
And I just never played it because not that I didn't do blind wargaming, like hell, I've done blind GI Anvil of Victory way back when, and
Yeah.
but it was the blind aspect of it that never, I mean, guess you could play it without playing blind, but from videos I've watched, it really is meant to be played like, against an opponent and not really blind, but flipped over units and
Right.
which kind of makes it interesting, right? But
Yes.
difficult to solitaire. So
Yeah.
we got Meandering Mike joined us, and he lives up in Washington. And Jonathan Dyer, welcome. And if you guys watching have questions, feel free to ask. We'll work them in. Um, so, what would you say? And I know that you've dabbled in miniatures too,
Yep.
but what's your I don't want to say favorite game because I actually don't like that question. What would you say is like your what's your favorite genre, and maybe some games that stand out that to you that either you've played or you really would like to play? And this will help generate our long playlist since you are not that far away.
Well, probably my favorite that I loved playing was Original Squad Leader. Just because the experience was very pertinent to what I did in my job in the military. Um, I really enjoy bolt action. Um, as far as a miniature game goes, I love the simplicity of bolt action, as well as the kind of the scale, actually. But I had some 6 millimeter stuff for a while, and I was playing. A few times I'd been able to play the GHQ games and stuff, and I enjoyed that. But really, mostly the bolt action stuff is probably as far as miniature game goes. Um, as far as favorite games, I really enjoy the old school tactical and the Geddon Wars by Flying Pig games.
Oh, Armageddon. Okay, yeah. Okay,
Yeah, and
yeah.
you and I have played that a number of times, which I've
Yes,
I've enjoyed.
and
Um,
we will again. I want to play the like we talked about the marine landings. The what's that expansion for the Pacific called for old school
oh,
tech?
you talking about OST Pacific and Hellbent?
Yeah, Hellbent. That's it. Yep.
Yes,
Yep.
yes. I
Yep.
enjoy. Um, OST for me is kind of like a modernized version of Squad Leader. There's a few things that I wish probably got incorporated, but from the old Squad Leader. But overall, I really enjoy that game.
Yeah, no, I mean, I obviously we've played it. I've enjoyed it. You know me. You've seen my collection, and it's even though I've been selling it, it's still quite vast. And yeah, I play that. Lock and Load Tactical. Of course, been dabbling back in Squad Leader, which I'm happy to play. I prefer ASL, but I get to play that at times still. So you know, I thought it was interesting too here when you first kicked off, start talking about Panzer Blitz and just that iconic imagery, right, of the Jag Tiger. Did you know at the time when you were 10 years old that that was a Jag Tiger?
I had no idea.
No, it just looked cool, right?
It really did.
Yeah.
That and Squad Leader, both of those games, the cover art for those boxes was absolutely fantastic.
Oh, we got a guy William on here. He said he's coming to wargaming after a long retirement, and he retired from the U.S. Army in 2011. All right, so we got a little. I don't know if that's the right word. A cabal of us, a couple of veterans
Yep.
here. So I'd be glad to fly you guys anywhere you need to go on a C-141. But I'm not going in the field. Sorry, I got enough of that at survival school.
I've done some Space A on a 141 too.
I bet. Yeah, take we used you know what? More than happy to take guys to some R&R in different parts of the world, right? And this is a family friendly show, so we won't go into, some of the things. But that being said, what's funny is for me, I mean, a little bit, but I think I'm about 10 years older than you only, but um and everybody's heard this story a million times, but for me, I played Stratego and played a lot of chess and army men in the dirt and all that stuff. And when I was 10 in 1975, my parents, I had a subscription to Boys Life magazine, and that was published by Monarch Publishing, who published all the Avalon Hill games. And there was this ad in there for Tactics 2, so that was a game that got me going, and shortly after that was Third Reich, which it was like going from third grade to college. I was like, how the
Yep.
hell do you play this,
Yep.
And then Squad Leader was like 1977. I went over to sleep over a friend's house, and he was always getting a new game. He was that kid, and he's like, "Oh my God, look at this game!" And I'm sure we screwed it up, but man, that weekend I think we played the Guards counterattack, and I'm sure we played it all wrong, but it was amazing. Ranged machine gun fire
Yep.
and things like that. Like that was like it was mind boggling. See,
Well, and I don't, Mark, you could probably answer this, but one of the things that I really liked about the original Squad Leader game, and I didn't see it in Advanced Squad Leader. I got the starter kits 1 and 2, and I gamed them a little bit, kind of solo. But um, the one thing, and you mentioned this, is the penetration value of the machine guns. And for me, I was a machine gunner in the Army. And
right.
that rule absolutely reflected the realities of machine gun fire. Um, I didn't see that in Advanced Squad Leader, and maybe you did.
It's there, but it's been about a year since I played. I have to look. It's there,
Okay.
but it's I think it's captured in a couple different ways. Is fire lane rules, which are like
Okay.
preset, but you also capture that, I think, in a way that's the rate of fire, because in
Okay.
ASL you have rate of fire, but of course there are rules there for it.
Okay.
I just it's called something else. I mean, I will say this: I've got all the starter kits. And if I'll play squad leader, but if you ever want me to show you ASL, I'll gladly.
Oh,
I
I'll be
just
more than happy.
I played squad leader all the way through GI Anvil of Victory,
Yeah. Yeah.
and way back when, and I was the first guy in line when 1986, I think it was, that ASL came out. The rule book and Beyond Valor might have been 85. I think it was 86. And I remember people go, "You're nuts." People got mad. But, the reality was by GI Anvil of Victory, squad leader, if you played with even half the rules, it was a mess. You're looking through different rule books,
Yeah.
and there were rules that duplicated each other, and
Yep.
a phenomenal game, right? I mean, very awesome. And there are to this day people that are devoted, that's all they'll play.
Right.
But ASL, and despite popular beliefs, not a lifestyle. It does have a huge rule book, but in most of the scenarios, you use like 20% of the rules, I think. But Meandering Mike, as one kid just says, I was never in the military, but I acted as a Russian Op 4 in MilSim operations for a few years. Okay. I don't know what MilSim operations is. That sounds interesting.
Military simulations operations.
Yeah, is that something the military does, or is that? I wonder if that's a
Yeah, it
game
is.
thing.
Especially after 9/11, they hired a lot of contractors to come in and simulate opposing force, and they were dedicated specifically to that to make it
Okay.
more realistic.
I wonder if it was. I know when I went through survival school, we were captured by the we did, you did this whole escape and evasion part and the POW part. Of course, the POW part is, you got captured, and we were captured by the East Germans. And what I remember the most, I'm not going to waste a lot of time with it, but what I remember the most about that whole thing was I was criminal number 16. And after the fact, when I finished the school and I was there, it was up in Fairchild, up in Washington. And I was there for a couple of days, and I'm in the club, having a beer. And I ran into one of the guys, and then, bullshit when it turns out he's one of the guards. And they would get these psych evaluations like
Yeah.
every cycle, and they would get X amount of time off because it was probably about as realistic as they could make it without actually hitting us, you know.
Right.
Um, but it was interesting talking to him. He's like, "Yeah, we get X amount of time off after each training cycle, and we have to go through a psych evaluation, and because they don't want people like getting so into it that it can go to their heads." But anyways, yeah, okay, that's good to know. I didn't know that about Milsims. What's the I know you got Compass Games NATO, which is
I
on
do.
my list to play. Damn it, you know what? I just need to get rid of this chemo shit, and I wish we'll get in some gaming, especially with your schedule now that got it down. So, oh, let's see. Mike said it was a private company called Mill Sims West in Washington State doing ops in Washington, Oregon, and California. And then after he stopped, the owner moved to Illinois and started doing ops on the East Coast. Okay, cool. That's really interesting. I've had Mike on the show. We didn't get to talk about that, but that sounds really kind of interesting. Talking about that kind of stuff makes me think of. Have you ever played Labyrinth or interest in playing that at all?
I know what it is. I've seen it. I've actually got, I used to have Twilight Struggle, which I believe is kind of the same kind of line. It's just a different, um, but I've also got several of the coin series, which I think is kind of in the same mindset as Labyrinth, if I'm
I,
not mistaken.
honestly, I have Labyrinth with the expansions, and sad to say, I mean, I want to play it. I don't know how closely tied it is to the coin games, which I have played. I don't have it anymore, but I have played Distant Foreign Fields, and
I
of
know which
course,
one I have that one.
and of course, I played the Muslims. But the reason I asked about Labyrinth is I really want to play it sometime, but I've had trouble playing it because, and it's okay. Sometimes when I've had the opportunity, people are like, "Oh, I don't want to play that because of the subject," and I'm like, "Okay, but well, anyways, maybe we'll
Well,
give
I
it a
have that
try
one. So if you
sometime."
ever want to play that one,
Oh, okay, good. I'll even play the Muslim. I'll play the bad guys. Like
well, and the thing is it's
it's a
especially
game,
special to me because I was there,
right? Right.
and it it does reflect a lot of the realities on the ground there, which is what fascinated me about that game to begin with.
I have, I got there's a Paper Wars game, and it's interesting you say that. I'm glad because I know sometimes this stuff can be like, okay, that's too soon. Like I have my friend Dave Miller, who you've met. You'll probably meet him Saturday at the meetup. Is he coming? I don't know if he's coming or not. He was an infantryman. I mean, he was in the reserves, but he did 2 tours in Iraq and 2 in Afghanistan. And he has really sweet, really nice guy if you haven't met him, but he's retired now and, living the life. But he has PTSD pretty bad. So he'll disappear and he'd be like, "Yeah, when I disappear, I'm checked into the VA, you know?
Yeah,
And, I don't know a lot because, like, a lot, which is cool. I don't want to turn this into that show, but basically, what I do know is they were doing some kind of escort duty in Afghanistan, and he was involved in a friendly fire incident with UN troops shot at him, actually. And I know that's a piece of his. I'm sure there's other things too, but that's a piece of it. But game wise, Distant Foreign Fields, Labyrinth. Um, and now that's what I was gonna. That's where I start off. So there's a Paper Wars issue I have, and I'm kind of in and out of touch with the guy. He's more of a miniatures gamer, but he lives down in Modesto, I think, somewhere, or maybe Merced. But he designed a game on Second Fallujah that looks I've always been interested in. But in that sense, I also have a game on Manila and World War II. I've got, well, But let me ask you this. What, so with the newer modern stuff, what attracts you to that? Like the hypothetical modern stuff? Like the 80s Warsaw Pact goes hot, that whole thing.
Well,
So,
I think as a kid, it was the whole zeitgeist, if you will, the spirit of the times. The To be honest with you, I don't know what attracted me to war games specifically, um, but I know growing up, I was very aware of a lot of the conflicts that occurred and that could potentially occur. So, like,
right,
I remember sitting in my dad's car listening to AM radio, and they were talking about the invasion of the Falkland Islands. And I didn't know what I know about it now is far greater than what I knew about it then, obviously. But I knew the British were kind of like our friends, and I knew the Argent. I didn't really know who the Argentinians were. And I remember hearing reports, battle reports on AM radio, as my dad would drive us to and from wherever it was we were going. We lived out in the Bay Area at the time. Um, and that's another thing that kind of intrigued me about the whole thing. The idea of the Cold War and the Cold War potentially going hot. One of the things that brought that to me was uh, the um, the nuclear war movie. I just had it in my head and I
was
can't
it
think of it now.
was it the day after or
The Day After. Thank you.
yeah?
I remember seeing that as a kid on TV and being absolutely petrified of that, but I was also kind of intrigued. But one of the things that I remember from childhood was going up to family's house in Klamath Falls, and we actually saw the movie Red Dawn in the theaters there.
Right.
And we saw the movie
Great
Red
movie,
Dawn,
yeah.
and I know everybody thinks it was kind of a political thing at the time, and since then I've seen interviews with John Milius and everything, and he was like, "Dude, it wasn't supposed to be a political movie; it was just supposed to be a good story." But um, and I agree with that. But that movie really kind of set the hook as far as, and it was about that same time, maybe even in the same visit, that I saw the game Assault at my cousin's house, because that's where we were. And like the whole thing just absolutely attracted me to that. And it was probably a few years after that. Well, I think Red Dawn came out in '84, and I think NATO came out like in '87 or '88. And I remember getting a copy of that and trying to lay it out on the table and read the rules for it, and it was above my head. And I held on to it for years, hoping to find an opponent to play. Really couldn't. Ended up getting rid of it. But when Compass said they were re-releasing it, I'm like, oh, I'm on top of that. And I ended up, of course, getting a copy, which I'm very happy I did. But that whole era, I think, like with games like Fortress America and NATO and the movies that came out at the time, I think really kind of just like set that hook as far as just playing games and being interested in those sort of things. And I think that's really what drew me in. I think NATO was probably, excuse me, the only Hex Encounter game I owned up until I actually bought Squad Leader. And then by
Okay.
that point, I was out of the house. I was an adult. I was in the military, and Squad Leader really set that. And then it just kind of grew from there, um, where I saw these other games. And man, you look at, and you know this better than I do, but the advances and just the strides that wargaming has made, especially in the last 20 years, with graphics and the revisions of all the classics and everything, I really think um, we're seeing something special as far as, you really, you know, um, video games kind of killed a lot of wargaming in a lot of ways, but I still think that there is still a place for paper and cardboard wargaming and sitting face to face with people and really going through that. I really do believe in that. And
Yeah, no, I think that's absolutely right. And like I said, it was really interesting. Was the last show I did was with this kid named Ivan, and if Ivan, you see this, I love you, but he's 24 years old, and he's literally gotten into like the ASL starter kits, and of course was on Facebook. I was chatting and said, "Hey, man, and got the show." But as he came on, and it's really actually an interesting show to watch. But as a young kid, he's like doing all the things like kind of what you just said, like all these great graphics. He's actually introducing his friends that don't even know what a war game is to wargaming. And it's like, but yeah, there's just all this really cool, great new stuff. We all have, and I should say the older you are, but though we all have these nostalgic memories. And there are still some games I think that have value to play, but um, it's, but yeah, we're in like this new golden age, right? There's just all this great stuff out there, great graphics, great gameplay, great innovative design concepts, that are just amazing. And I think like the new NATO is interesting to mention because people will be like, oh my God, the rule book is so long. But it's a rule book that actually mechanically the game's not that difficult.
right,
And it's a rule book that's it's just complete. It's just like it's unlike anything, I mean, my experience, I haven't played it yet, but my experience with it is just complete, and then but I will say this, one game you got to get yourself a copy of eventually, and I'll play it any day, well, anytime, is the Compass GDW remake of the Third World War games.
yep,
You get 4 games, and I got to tell you, you talk about back in the day, but that was like I'd come home from a mission, and there was a couple of game stores at the time in Vacaville, but there was one in particular would go to, and I remember it was going in there, and when I saw Battle for Germany, and I'm like, oh, what's this? And oh, it's GDW. So I had some other GDW games, and so, oh, this looks really interesting. And I go, oh, it's set in like right now, basically, like,
yep,
and so as they say, the rest is history. I picked it up, and then over the, whatever it was, the next few months, they released, the
yep,
3 other games that were in that series. And what I'll say about the Compass Games remake is you get all 4 games in one box.
yep,
Okay. And it's killer, man. It upgraded the graphics. They uh, adjusted some of the maps and stuff to allow for expansions, but they didn't touch that game. I mean, if you know how to play the stuff in the 90s, you could almost just port it over. And
well,
but it's so worth the upgrades just because of the graphics, and it
yep.
is set up, the maps go a little further into Russia and things like that than the originals didn't, but that's because there's going to be like future expansions.
Well, and that was one of the games I remember seeing when it was still in print, and I wanted to get it, and at the time I was unable to afford it. But that was one of those games where you kind of felt the gravity of it as far as like this could be a plausible scenario. Like this could play out in real life. And that was one of the things I think about the 80s was, all these games coming out, and it was quite possible that this could play out in real life. And so there's kind of a gravity to it. You wanted to play these games because there was a sense of like, I want to kind of see what may happen. And so there was a certain amount of uh, kind of like pertinence to it. You were like, yeah, I want to see this game. That was what NATO was for me. I remember once again going back to cover art and marketing and all these things. I'm sure they did it, but seeing the Bradley splash through the um, through a river on what was probably a reforger exercise, kind of brought home the gravity of like, this is kind of like, these guys aren't just out there doing war. The military isn't just out there doing war games. They're actually practicing for an active defense against Warsaw Pact attack. It was like, so I think that kind of set that hook, to want to play that out and be that kind of armchair general, if you will.
Oh yeah, no, it was definitely. I mean, like I know, like our main mission at Travis when we flew reforger missions was to move the Seventh Light Infantry Division, which
Yep.
I don't know, they're not there anymore, but they used to be up in I think Fort Ord, and they'd come down to load them up and get them over to Europe, and depending on where, drop them off in Luxembourg or Belgium or
Yep.
and but yeah, no, really, because there was Reforger. We used to do Cobra Gold. There
Yep.
was an exercise called Bright Star, I think it was, that we did in the Middle East. That's how I got to see the pyramids and stuff. But
Yep.
just really interesting. I got to see a Sherman Super 8 once. I was in. It was during an exercise, and we took some troops into Jordan, and we're at the airfield, and I don't remember exactly what we were doing, and sure as shit, patrolling the perimeter out in that freaking hot desert. Now imagine this shit. But it was an old Sherman Super 8, and I only knew that because of my wargaming. I said,
Yep.
"Oh my God, look!" You know, and I can't imagine. I know that during the Gulf War, I was already out, right? And of course, I mean, I got out in '87, but I can remember watching, film of these guys in their full chem gear, and I was like, oh
Yep.
my God, because I had
Yep.
been there without chem gear, and I was like, oh man, I would not want to be in that. But anyways, but yeah, just, and then I think you said something too, like that movie The Day After, the nuclear. I know I'm kind of jumping around here, but the nuclear war stuff. For us that grew up with it, it was real. Like it was like, are we gonna be wiped out? Am I gonna die in a nuclear fireball? Right? I don't know, but
Well, and
yeah, yeah,
and on top of that, like, you remember, like, and it's the same. I believe it's the same in the new revised version, but in the old NATO version, if you tried to launch tactical nukes, you had to roll. And if you rolled like something like a 1 through 3, you automatically lost because you brought down nuclear Armageddon. And if you rolled like a 4 through 6, you could continue the game with continued tactical nuke strikes, but there was a bunch of reduction in capabilities and stuff like that. But I remember that being distinct and having seen those games. But one game you may also remember too is, it's not a hex and counter game, but it's the game Supremacy, which I have, which I remember sitting
yeah. I don't
there with
know
my
about that.
friends listening to 2 Minutes to Midnight by Iron Maiden playing Supremacy. I thought you'd like that.
Up the
Um,
irons, yeah, yeah.
yeah, and so yeah, I mean, there was a whole like atmosphere of this game going on. This gaming and the times that were going on, that just really kind of like wow, it was definitely a special time.
Really quick, I see in the comments, so Charles Latour, I saw you put 62 Avalon Hill games, nostalgia. Yep, hey, nostalgia has value, and that's cool. I still have a bunch of Avalon Hill games. A few of them I would still play. I'm curious, Charles, if you're putting if you're still watching in your comments, you put number 2 is a surprise to some, Compass. So I don't know what that means. Maybe expand on that comment a little bit. Supremacy, Daniel says, is fun. I tried Supremacy way back when, and I'd be curious, did they ever fix the problem with my remembrance of it was the first guy to go would sell his stuff, get lots of money, and crash the market.
Well,
Yeah, right. I
supremacy was
don't.
kind of like Risk with nukes. It
Okay.
was,
Okay.
I like to think of war games as like a story.
All right.
Um,
Okay. Yeah.
I think war games, you have one end of the spectrum and you have another end of the spectrum, and you have one end of the spectrum which is like Risk, right? And that's kind of like a cartoon almost. It does it give you kind of a flavor of what happened? Yes, but you can pick apart Risk um, all day and say that that's not a really realistic military game. Well, y- you can argue that some aspects of Risk are accurate. Most of it's not. To whereas you have the very opposite end of the game, which is um, the spectrum, which is like something that they would probably play in an army war college, where you need like 200 staff to actually run the game because it's so detailed that you can't have just two players playing the game. You got to have two players playing the game. You got to have a staff running all the aspects, logistical things, all these things of the game, which is more like a documentary, right? Like a boring, dry documentary. And I think somewhere along that spectrum, you have all these other games that fit within that spectrum. That you have, some that are a little more cartoonish, and some that are a little bit more documentary. Um, and what you're looking for, in my opinion, as far as war games go, is a good story. And you know, it's what can you walk away from that game with? Um,
I.
some
Yeah.
people some people want the cartoon side. Some people really want the documentary side, the boring, dry 12-hour documentary. Most people are somewhere in the middle as far as that goes. They want a little bit of the cartoon, they want a little bit of the documentary, they want, to learn about history. Um, on the other hand, they don't necessarily have all the time in the world to dedicate to, something like a full-on documentary. So I think when you're talking about war games, is supremacy necessarily realistic? I think there is definitely some realistic aspects to it, but I think also too that there's a lot of cartoonish stuff, and better than I do that there's certain things in war games that are abstracted, and that's based on whoever the author or the designer is. That's kind of based on their what they want to see at the end, I
I think.
think.
I think. I mean. I think for me, nailed it. And like, I love games. I think all games tell a story, right?
Yep.
And I like that. You know, whether I'm playing, and I have the reputation as, oh, if Mark only likes it if it has 27 maps and 40,000 counters, which is kind of true, but not really. I'll play anything that's a war game, and I like. I think they all tell stories. I also like randomness in my game, but in the sense of, I don't want something totally random out of my control. But I think we have too much knowledge as it is when we sit down to play a game, right? You can look at the whole map, see where all the pieces are, you know, um, and but randomness takes away some of that control, whether it's
Yeah.
OCS and the surprise roll, or squad leader in different games with their morale, where your squads break and your leaders, oh, he's not going to do what I'm telling him to go here, and he broke. What the hell, or whatever. I think they all have a good value. So what? Tell us. And I know you probably have a bunch, but um, what's a gaming story or experience that just really stands out for you? Whether it's, oh, I was playing this friend of mine and we did this, or like something that hopefully I'm making sense how I asked this, but just, what's this real standout moment for you in gaming that was either exciting or just memorable, or it was, oh my gosh, it was just,
Well, I think I think it would, and I don't mean to keep pushing old Squad Leader because I know
no, it's okay.
it,
It's a
it
great game. So
yeah, and I know ASL has made a lot of improvements and stuff, and I haven't had a really chance to sit down and play, an actual opponent in a lot of these games. But the special moments, I think, um, was the old Squad Leader only because it was ASL. I think had been released at the time, but we hadn't gotten into that. But really, Squad Leader is about infantry combat, right? We all know that. And seeing guys that were not gamers, that were not really interested in any sort of kind of gaming, for them to kind of gather around us at the table and see us playing like the guards counterattack, or what was scenario three? Was it
it was
uh,
the Streets of Stalingrad. It tied
Streets of
one and
Stalingrad?
two. Yeah, yeah.
Seeing me and my roommate, us playing each other in this game, and these guys standing around us that had no interest in playing a game, but were just for some reason kind of interested in what we were doing, going, oh yeah, that squad needs to flank around, and that squad needs to lay down suppressive fire, because they were all infantrymen surrounding us at the time, and
Right.
they were all like, oh yeah, this is what you need to do. This is, they related to them as infantrymen, and that's one of the things where, like, I think Squad Leader was one of those special times where I really missed wargaming and having a sit down opponent, and working through the tactical solutions, as they used to call them, the tactical solutions, and having almost like in some cases, almost like a pre-rehearsed solution, because you knew what you needed to do to solve the problem. Um, and that's where kind of bolt action really kind of fills that, as far as that's, I say bolt action only because I've been able to sit down with like you, or even Flames of War, with you and the guys up in Sacramento. When we went up there, we were able to actually sit down and work through and play the game, to whereas a lot of the stuff, I've got all these games. You can probably see them behind me on the shelf there. um, they're doing exactly that. They're sitting on the shelf simply because I don't have the time, to join you guys all the time, and I wish I did. And
Well, I still got
um,
my Germans and my Japanese for bolt action, so I still,
yeah,
that. So
yeah,
no, no, that's well, time, right? That's the thing when we get retired. I was just looking at the chatter. So Eric says, "Oh, Squad Leader changed my life. I think it changed a lot of people's lives."
yep.
Charles talks about, yeah, he's going to save money for a roof, but he'd have more Compass games. Absolutely. Now, I also want to say, somebody made a comment in here about decision games. I will say this: I love wargaming. I love the journey that it's put us all on. And I will say this: I think decision games or newer stuff is much better than their older stuff. I'll just say that. And everybody knows I'm a huge fan of their Axis Empires Ultimate Edition.
Yep.
But yeah, what was I going to say? No, I think that's great. Speaking about, we're a squad leader, and it's okay because I'll play squad leader. If you see the movie The Final Countdown, there's a scene where the guy's on the aircraft carrier, and they don't talk about it, but they're actually playing squad leader. You know, and
I'm
there's
gonna
a
have to
few.
watch that again now.
Yeah, it's literally like you got to pay attention, but they're in the, I don't know what you call it on a Navy ship, but the mess, not the mess, but where the galley or whatever, where they eat,
Yep.
and they're down, and there's a couple guys looking down, and you can actually see there's two guys sitting there playing squad leader. It's really, yeah, it's
That's
pretty,
that's another game, or that's another movie that I'm talking about, with the whole Spirit of the Times thing.
yeah.
That
What's
was a
funny,
fantastic movie.
yeah, there's the Victory Games Carrier, which is a fairly complex game on carrier operations in the Solomons at Solitaire. It actually comes with A6 and F14 counters, and it has a scenario where you can like redo the, oh, we're going to go shoot down all the Japanese planes that are on their way to attack Pearl Harbor, right? A lot of people don't know that Victory Games did that in a lot of their games. I think in Tokyo Express, I think they did that too. They have some, well, not modern now, but like 80s stuff, like his hypothetical, you know, oh, here, you want to go see what this would do? And back then, here's
Yep.
a counter, go try it out.
Well, and
Um,
even historical board gaming released like a Tomcat and a Carrier for Axis and Allies.
yeah, no, it's fun. It's great when you said you started off with the Milton Bradley 86 Axes and Allies. And I remember getting that. And I'm not really, I don't really have a very good relationship with my father, and he's got Alzheimer's now. But that is something that he would play with us. Me, I'm the oldest, but me and my brother. And I thought, man, it's like fat. It was a fun, fascinating game. You'd spend
Yeah.
hours figuring out strategies, and just, oh, what am I going to do? And we're not here. We're not going to solve what is a war game, okay? But I think those games obviously had value because it helped get you into the hobby. I think what's interesting for me is, I mean, I spent basically most of my gaming life getting people together to play games because it's always
Yep.
brought me a lot of fun and joy. And I can even remember being young when I was like, I literally would just talk about it with anybody. Like, oh, do you play games? Like I was naive enough to think everybody had heard of these things.
Right.
And even
Yep.
though year after year, but every once in a while I'd meet somebody and, get together and play or whatever. And, but I think the social aspect of the gaming, and I enjoy playing a solitaire game. I enjoy studying games, and especially now, it's 2 in the morning. There's nobody to play, but I'll set stuff up and I do stuff. But I always think that's the best part. And whether in the good news is with technology, you can do it Vassal and do it live. It's still not quite the
Yeah.
same as face to face, but hey, you get together, bullshit with your buddies, play a game, drink a beer, whiskey, soda, lemon, like whatever, right?
Right.
Just
Right.
have a good time doing it. Let me see here. Kent Smith says Panzer Command by Victory Games included a Leopard 2 counter. Yep. See, I knew it. I actually have that game. I was actually looking at it the other day. Panzer Command uh, is a platoon level game, right? On the Victory Games did, and it's like on the 42 Stalin approaches of Stalingrad and stuff. A lot of people may not know this, but and I've been told I know my shit. I guess it's kind of, I guess if you do something long enough. But that's the grandfather of the multi-man publishing the GTS Grand Tactical series, which by the way, we got to play that sometime. Damn, we got to add that to the list. Shit, we better live forever, Chris, I'll tell you. What else? So we still got a few minutes left here. People, you guys on the chat, you got any burning questions? I see a lot of stuff. Any burning questions for Chris or myself? Whatever you got, we got about, I try to keep the show to an hour. So we got about maybe 10 minutes if we go a little bit over. But if you got a burning question, ask. Charles has a ton of GHQ micro armor. I still have mine left, by the way, Chris. I saw you sold yours, but I still got mine. That's cool. I've actually I don't know if I'll ever get to it, but a game that I like to play. I've only played it a couple times, but it's actually manageable. Is the believe it or not, if you're doing just a couple ships, is Command at Sea from Clash of Arms.
Okay.
Yeah, and I was actually looking at the GHQ models for the Bismarck, the battalion. So I talk with my hands. The Prince Eugen in the hood and stuff. It's like, ooh. So we'll see. I don't know if I'll actually get them.
Well, I really love the 6 millimeter caliber or the 6 millimeter scale. Um, the problem that I found with 6 millimeter was well, it's a larger problem in that there's so many games out there and so little time and so little money that I have decided to focus on things like 28 millimeter bolt action. Um,
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. No,
and
I I have a utmost respect for people that can focus because I've
yeah,
if it's a war game outside of that, I can't focus for shit. Like yeah, I just and
yeah,
obviously with what's going on, I've had to really cut back and slow down, but it's okay. I'm at least I'm playing. I'm playing more. So
yeah.
um, yeah, I guess people don't have no questions here. I don't know what the deal is. Like you think they'd have some burning question for
That's
or
okay.
but yeah, it's okay. Um, yeah, I mean, you've seen my collection. I mean, behind me is almost none of it, but I've got like my old Time Life books that I paid
Yep,
way back in the day. Remember, you used to get those as a
yep.
subscription, and if you think about it, but even back then they were expensive. They were like I want to say with shipping, and I could be misremembering, but like, and I have all it goes from there into this cabinet. But I have all the volumes, and they're not worthless, but they're not worth much. But I think each of those was like, even back in the day was like 12 or $15 each
Yeah,
with
yep.
shipping. But some phenomenal photography. I mean, it's
I used
time
to
life.
have
So.
a ton of those series, and I actually traded them away to Tom's books.
Oh, yeah, I wonder if that's still the set down there because he had. Well, it may not be the because I love Tom's books.
Yeah.
I need to bring some of my books to him actually because I know that I have. Oh my God, I've got so many books. It's insane. People are gonna have a heyday when I check out. Let's see. Wardrobe says, "Let's see if I ask a question will be out of the blue." No, it probably won't be wardrobe because nobody's asked any goddamn question. Oh, what are your top three games, Chris?
Um,
He's putting you on the spot.
so I'll start with Axis and Allies because I played that one a lot. I know that's not a hex encounter game, but
It's okay.
that's really what kind of sucked me into the wargaming. Squad Leader's probably the second, and then NATO, especially the re-release, is probably the third.
All
And I
right.
like, and I'll add a couple more to that. Silver Bayonet is another one that I really liked, especially the re-release.
Hey,
Fantastic what they did with that one. Um, and so that's probably one I would add to that.
okay. Hey, let me say hi to Hexy. He does some great videos if you haven't watched any. On I don't know how much YouTube you get to watch, but Hexy does some great stuff. Brian says, "Do you clip counters?" I know the answer to that, but
So that's a recent thing for me. Yes, I do, and it's become addictive. And most of my games are clipped, and the ones that aren't haven't been clipped yet. That's pretty much all there is to it. And I'm fortunate for more modern technology like Flying Pig Games. They kind of do that for you already. So,
yeah,
but yes, I do clip counters, and my
yeah.
wife
Some of
thinks
the
I'm a
newer
nerd for
games you
doing
don't.
it.
Hey, I celebrate nerddom. It's actually cool to be a nerd, by the way.
It is. It
You
is.
should tell we should tell our wives that. We should be like, hey, you might lose out because being a nerd's pretty cool now.
She's
So,
already accepted that.
oh, okay, good, good. I know I'm just kidding, but yeah, I've been a clipper for a long, long time. The only game I will not clip is ASL. I won't clip it, and I've done. Yeah, just because there's oh my god, so many counters, and and I anyways, yeah, I just but I am a clipper. I clip like you said, except for the newer. There are some new games you don't need to clip. They're great. Oh, I like it. Hexy says clipping is the rite of passage. That is correct. Oh my God,
Yes,
Brian
it is.
says, I asked my wife, I thought he was saying she'd rather have him drink beer. I said, oh, she's blessed. Would you rather I drink beer when I watch hockey or clip counters? Okay, that's fair. That's fair. Brian lives in Halifax, if I didn't mention that.
You can't do both.
Yeah, well, I think you can. I think he's just trying to, be safe. Absolutely. I know I used to do both all the time. Um, so let's see here. So we've only got a couple. Well, okay, we're actually at an hour. I like try to keep things at about an hour. So this is your chance to like any great thoughts, anything left that you want to share. I don't-
Um,
uh, yeah.
no, I was gonna say I wanted to thank you for having me on. It's been we've known each other for a few years now. We've gamed on and off as my schedule allows. Really tried to make the most of it where we can. I really have a deep admiration and respect for you as an avid wargamer. I really do.
Thank you. Yeah.
You um, you have done a lot, and just seeing the club in Lodi, um, that circle of friends that you have, um, and not only that, but the greater circle of friends and acquaintances and associates that you have, well within the wargaming community. Um,
Thanks.
I really respect that, and I consider myself kind of more of a casual wargamer simply because I can't get to it as often as I want to, but I love the hobby. And I hope that maybe in a couple years I'll be able to retire and have more time for that, and maybe more kids will get out of the nest, and I'll actually have a room where I can set some things up, and and do the that sort of thing. But it's uh, it's been a journey with us in the last few years. I'll tell you that.
Well, I appreciate that, and it's what do they call it, the Brotherhood of Wargaming or the Counter or the I don't know what they call it, but it's a pleasure to know you. Have and I love doing this show. If any of you guys watch and want to be part of it later on, I'll have my email in the description. You can email me and I'll get you on. I look forward to Krista playing, and I want everybody out there enjoy the journey, keep playing the games, and just hey, have a great time, and that's it. And Chris, I'll be in touch. I'll talk to you soon. I gotta see. Maybe we can get something going. But I'll see you. I'm gonna see you Saturday. I gotta see if I'm up to it
Yep.
because I got my chemo tomorrow. But I know I'll be there. I don't know if I'll be able to play, but it just kind of depends how I feel. But anyways, thanks everybody for joining in. Thank you, Chris, for joining me. Really appreciate it. You, the War Gamers, make this show what it is, and thanks a lot, man. Take care. We'll see you soon. All right.
Take care, Mark. We'll
All
see you
right.
soon.
Yeah. Bye bye.
All right.